Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 64 of Talking Elite. I am your host, Adam Galexiy, and I'm here to make a special announcement. I think that's always the big thing they say when Tony Khan has a big announcement, and some people find it hilarious. Some people are like, oh, what is it? But I digress. Tonight, we are talking about the assessment of Tony Khan, AEW, now in its fifth year of existence, debuting in 2019. Its owner and president, Tony Khan, has made some smart decisions, not so smart decisions, and we're here to talk about them as a panel and as you guys, as viewers and listeners. Before we begin, let me introduce you guys to everyone joining me tonight. First and foremost, my partner in crime that has been with me the last couple of weeks doing our WrestleManias, and we've just had fun times going back and forth bantering. Jason. Jason, welcome to the show, bud. How you doing?
Oh, I get first dibs. Oh, hey, how are you doing? I was waiting on you to introduce Connor. I was like, oh, me? Oh, hey.
Me
too.
I'm good, man. How are you this evening?
I'm great. I'm very excited for this topic. This is kind of like a mentality thing that you and I connected with about trying to figure out what the next topic was. And you and I messaged each other and we're like, we have to do something on Tony Khan. Like, we have to talk about Tony Khan.
Well, and you said he's made some good decisions and bad decisions. Now while you're introducing everybody else, I'm trying to think of the good ones.
Also joining us tonight, she's back. We haven't seen her in a while. I think since a few WrestleMania episodes ago. But she's our favorite cue card girl from the Midwest and Wardlow's biggest fan and manager, Danny. Danny, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys? Always a pleasure to be with three of my favorite people on my favorite night of the week, which is Thursday, because Law and Order SVU is on, but I'm here with you guys.
Oh, awesome. Glad you could sacrifice that show to join us tonight.
I didn't sacrifice it. The DVR is running.
And then finally joining us tonight, always great to see him. I saved him because he is one of the best people ever met and ever talked to. And again, I say it every week, if it wasn't for him, this podcast was basically not exist. But he's everyone's favorite person and lovable guy, Connor. Hey, Connor, how's it going, bud?
It's going pretty good. It's good to be on.
Yeah, very excited. I know it was rough for you coming on Tuesday because we had the bad storms on Tuesday and you couldn't make AEZ Canada, but glad to see you on tonight. And you were on last night for reaction, so that's always good too. So welcome. So first and foremost, as we're talking about Tony Khan, before we get into that topic, let's get a quick review of what we thought on AEW Dynamite last night and our takes from it. Connor, you reacted to it. What was your take from it?
I thought the ending was really good. Joe and Swerve. Since Christian Cage and Edge is over, that's probably the only feud that feels important or that they're building towards weekly. What else was there? I like the Thunder Rosa and Mariah May match. That's probably one of the best matches of the entire night. I thought they really did well in that match. Trent turned against Orange Cassidy. We were reacting to it, and Siren, she can get pretty excited, and she was getting real excited, and she's always about blood at Orange Cassidy and this and that. I thought Orange Cassidy had turned. So, but yeah, it was a pretty good Dynamite. There were some things that I didn't care too much for, and a lot of people apparently didn't either. But it was a pretty good show.
It's good. Jason, your thoughts on last night's episodes? Good, the bad, the ugly.
Well, honestly, I'm not a big Best Friends fan. I mean, it's like Trent turned, and my first thought was that, I mean, I had my head dapped up, and I'm like, will anybody care? I enjoyed the last segment, and we'll get into this with the Tony Khan assessment. I don't want to go too much into it, but I've seen a lot of backlash for Edge's promo. Adam Copeland, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I'll be honest with you. Everybody's like, oh, you got two sides of the story. You got people saying, oh, he just got a big bonus to go out there and do that. And other people like, no, he meant it. I'm on the side that I think he meant every word he said. However, I'm also a realist when it comes to what he said, and I take it with a grain of salt because his promo was passionate. I believed him, but I also know who he's worked with since he's been in AEW and who he has not worked with since he's been in AEW. And that'll go back to, I'm sure we'll, reference the CM Punk interview from earlier in the week with a lot of the assessment of Tony Khan. And, when he's got to work with, a perpetuant child as Adam Page, or he has to go work with the Young Bucks, and his experience comes through and says, no, mate, let's try it this way. And they come back with the store, everything you've heard they want to come back with. If they put him and Christian Cage together, which eventually, we all know will happen at some point, and they do go against the Young Bucks, will he still feel the same way that he felt last night when he has to work with people that he's not comfortable with? I mean, he's been working with his best friend the whole time he's been there. Then he brings in Matt Cardona on Collision to work with, who is another very good friend of Adam Copeland. And he's worked with some of the younger guys, in the Cope Open, such as Andy Garcia and a couple of the other younger guys he worked with, who I am sure were starstruck to be in the ring with, Edge to them. He's Adam now backstage, getting to know him. But, that was my main take from last night, was just, it was a very passionate plea from Edge. And I agreed with every word he said when he he stopped people from booing when he said the WWF. No, I agree with it. Just because we sit here and say what we like, what we don't like, there's no reason to boo. I mean, just because he mentioned the WWF, WWE, whatever. But again, I want to see if his opinion or his demeanor stays the same. Because one thing I will reference in the CM Punk interview was he talked about how many friends he had at AEW, how many people he enjoyed at AEW, and there was 5 or 6 that did not like him. And we all know who those 5 or 6 are. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm sure at some point Adam Copeland is going to have an opinion on something that needs to be done differently when he's working with somebody that they could just go out there and not talk for 2 years and go out there and have a match that everybody's going to enjoy, or cut a promo on each other that everybody's going to enjoy. And when he goes into those waters, I want to see how he reacts and what his experience is. And I agree with Connor. I really enjoyed the women's match, and I also enjoyed the ending segment. I like the way the Swerve was like, that's all you got. I'm taking that championship. It makes you want to see that match. Diving further into the assessment of Tony Khan, it's like, there's 3 main parts of a show: the opening, the 9 o'clock hour, and the main event segment. And a lot of those he just does not get right, in my opinion.
Right. I could totally agree on all your points there. Danny, your quick review of Dynamite last night, were some positives, some negatives for you in that show?
So first thing I want to do is just kind of address somebody who actually had the nerve to call me out for saying that I hate AEW. I don't hate AEW. I cracked a joke today on a forum about the Young Bucks, as usual. And I said, what's the difference between a pro wrestler and pro wrestling? Ask a pro wrestler. What's the difference between a bad wrestler? Ask Cucamonga. And it's what I do. And this person, was like, well, she hates the Young Bucks and that she trashes AEW. I'm like, bro, if I were trashing AEW, why have I attended 3 collisions? Or I'm sorry, 3 Dynamites, a Collision, and All Out. I have 3 shirts sitting in my bedroom right now in my closet somewhere, FTR, Wardlow, and All Elite Wrestling. I'm making plans to attend All Out this year. So I'm still deciding if I want to do SummerSlam in Cleveland or All Out in Chicago. And the pieces of my heart are Starks, FTR, Wardlow, Orange, and Adam Copeland. So again, if I hate AEW, why do I watch it? Why do I attend the shows? Again, last night, first thing, Young Bucks needing to win against Best Friends. No, it just useless, pointless, because here's why. They're just trying to make themselves relevant. This gimmick that they have is cute and all, but if you watch their matches, like I said, in a 6-man, they take frequent breaks, with Okada doing 3/4 of the work, as that was their last 6-man. What was that, like 2 or 3 weeks ago? They have no in-ring psychology. They don't even have a gimmick. And there's other people in AEW that have more charisma than they do. And I'm sitting here again thinking back to, Edge, Christian, Hardy's. These are two guys that couldn't last 5 minutes against the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, even Edge and Christian back in like 99. So to the people that are, oh, she hates AEW. No, I don't hate AEW. I just don't like two guys that think they're God's gift to AEW with a contract that they don't deserve and EVP titles that they're poor representatives of the company for all the gossiping that they do like little girls. And one more thing, just because I insult them does not mean I listen to Cornette. So I just wanted to clear that. As for the show, let me just say that that ending is part of the reason why I want to go see Swerve now in Chicago again. I liked it. The only segment that I felt was a little flat was Sasha with Willow Nightingale. Other than that, Edge's, I'm still calling him Edge, probably because I was just listening to Metalingus the other day. But again, that was a good promo. I thought it was great. I thought it really told a story, and I'm excited to see where they're going to go with this one. The shock again for me was Trent Beretta turning on Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor. Where does Trent Beretta go now, and how is he booked?
I totally agree. I like everybody's points. To a T. Again, I had to go back and rewatch this today, like during my lunch break at work. Watch the first hour because Wednesdays, the first hour, I'm usually at yoga because that puts my mind at ease. But I watched the second hour, so I had to go back and rewatch Edge's promo. I thoroughly enjoyed the promo. A lot of people complain that, and it might be part of the topic tonight. A lot of people complain that it's Copeland speaking from Tony Khan. These are Tony Khan's words because basically everybody feels that almost every promo written and set in AEW is Tony Khan's, which is not true. We got to remember AEW, again, WWE has their strict rules and regulations and scripts and all that. AEW, you remember a lot of people saying we like it here because we're allowed to put a feedback of what we want to say in our promos. It's not 100% of what Tony Khan and whatever writers he's got backstage puts into it. A lot of the wrestlers do have their own will to say, I actually do want to say it like this, and I want to say this, but they still have to follow that structure, but they're still able to have more of that freedom of speaking what they want. I mean, we saw it all the time in a lot of promos in AEW and everything like that. So the promo was great. I love his enthusiasm. I do feel Adam is a little more open now just because he's not as much as a WWE guy he was. I think he feels like he's at that Sting-esque line in his career where Sting found a rejuvenation in AEW when he came through. I think that's what Edge is doing now, is finding that new rejuvenation in AEW because he's got a lot of people he can wrestle there that he's never wrestled before. I mean, he name dropped so many people. I mean, he name dropped all the new signees, Okada, Ospreay, Monet. So, I mean, I love the promo. Yes, the promo by Sasha and Willow. I was enjoying Willow's promo a little bit of her speaking because it seems like she was speaking from the heart. That, she said, I felt like I was nobody, but people got behind me. That little you can do it, like the nobody that becomes a somebody kind of speech. But I enjoyed it up to the point where Sasha came out. Sorry, Mercedes. Listen, I have nothing against Mercedes. I think she's great talent. But I also read the tweet from Bully Ray when Mercedes basically said, good luck to you against Julia at Dynasty, but at Double or Nothing, I get the winner. And Bully goes, well, I thought rankings were back. How does Mercedes automatically get a match when she hasn't even wrestled once? Kind of see where he's coming from. But, I mean, look at someone like Edge. Edge came into AEW and immediately went after Christian when he was the TNT champion. Now, granted, before he had his first match with Christian, he wrestled one or two matches before that. So he did get a couple of matches in. So do we see that with Mercedes before Double or Nothing? Do we see her wrestle maybe one or two TV matches on Dynamite to kind of gear up for Double or Nothing? We'll have to see. Again, I did like the Tony or Mariah May, Thunder Rosa match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's great to see Thunder Rosa back in the ring, and actually they were going back and forth very well. There were some good spots there. The Hurricane Rana on the outside, like it looked like they were gonna fluke it, and she's gonna power bomb her, and then she just gets the Hurricane Rana off. And again, the beauty of production on AEW when Thunder goes to the desk to confront Tony, and the screen is split black and white and color.
Yes.
I mean, the production is just to a T.
Uh-huh.
Amazing how they do that. Great work for the production crew to do that. And then, of course, the best friends, the Trent Beretta turn. I myself, like our friend here on the show, Siren, so ready for an Orange Cassidy heel turn, but seeing someone like Trent, I remember seeing him at indie shows with him and Chuck E. Cheese when they were best friends and they were coming out to, I can't remember the song they came out to, but they came out to a great song from like the 90s. I can't remember what it was, but I can hear it in my head, but they came out to it. And just seeing him turn heel and the subtle things he did by just looking at Chucky and walking out and then just walking right past Sue. I mean, it's great. It's almost like when Wheeler Yuta joined the BCC. He walked away from best friends and got in the ring and just was like in everyone's faces. It's kind of like what Trent did last night, just walked away. And I think it's right that it was the right person to turn because he's been on a tear. Like he's been doing so well in matches. That 3-way he had, that hardcore 3-way a while back that he had with Moxley, Penta, and himself in the ring. And he's the one who won it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then of course the contract signing had me so thrilled for the championship match at Dynasty between Swerve and Joe, and just the lines. I mean, I did the whole thing when Joe said, "You look like you barely left PDD's party." Like I was done. I was like, "Oh my God, he did not just say that." So, and then Swerve just laughing in the ring, bleeding, says, "Dude, if that's all you got, I'm taking that title," and just signing it in his blood, and the crowd chanting, "You sick, you sick." It just. So thoroughly enjoyed it. There were some spots again last night that I did really enjoy. The whole Jay Lethal, Billy Gunn thing, I could have done without. I don't know where they're going with that. I'm kind of over it. Will Ospreay, you can never get enough Will Ospreay. I love Will Ospreay, but I don't know what they're doing with him. If they're trying to push him further away from the Don Callis family, which I hope it is. But overall, the show was okay last night. Wasn't the greatest, wasn't the worst. So we just have to take it for what it is.
Well, I'm going to jump in real quick before we go any further. The one cringe part of that whole best friends match for me, I don't know if you caught on to it, but right before the pinfall, when Trent's laid back on the ropes and he's like, "Mom," and she comes over there and kissed him and he like jumped up like Superman. I'm like, "Oh, that's creepy, dude. That's just creepy." But that's just me.
I mean, it's just a great. I mean, it's Sue. I mean, Sue and her minivan. It's just a big spot that everybody loves, that the crowd loves, and everything like that. So, but yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, that, Jason. But as we finish up with that, we move on to our topic tonight. Tony Khan, President, CEO of AEW and Ring of Honor. Now in his 5th year running the company, there have been a lot of goods. There have been a lot of bads. There's been a lot of post-show conferences that are awkward, and there are a lot of tweets that are awkward. So I'm going to go ahead and start right off the bat with the question. Just the simple question. If you would grade on a grading scale, Tony Khan right now, A to F, and a reason why you grade him that, what would it be? Connor, we'll start with you.
So just for like, not of all time, just right now.
Yes.
Right now, I'd probably give it a D. Just with seems like there's no leadership in that company at all. Like how things escalated the way they did. Like I hope he really learned his lesson. Eventually steps up. And I was listening to Bully Ray. Like sometimes it makes you think that wrestlers are taking advantage of him. Like they're willing to become buddy with him, so they can get a push, and then this and that. All time, I'd probably give it a way higher grade because there's been a lot of great moments in AEW. Stuff that we probably would have never have gotten if it wasn't for Tony Khan, like Sting finishing his career. CM Punk probably would have never came back. Bryan Danielson probably would have never had the matches he did against Kenny Omega. There's a lot of things we never would have gotten without AEW, but right now, it's a D. Just Tony himself. I like Tony. He's a really nice guy. I've met him in person. He's a really, really nice guy. Like, even when Punk said that, like, he truly is a nice guy. Like, he is probably the nicest wrestling promoter you can ever meet, probably. Not many wrestling promoters come out and shake the fans' hands and do any of that. You don't ever see Mr. Man doing that. Yeah, just right now, I give it a D.
Jason, what about your what on a grading scale? What would you give Tony Khan in the present time of AEW?
Ugh. All right. First off, for anybody listening, these opinions I'm expressing are those of mine solely. Please do not jump on my fellow co-hosts for my opinions. And I want to start off with, as somebody that grew up with, and there was more territories than what I got to see, but being in a small southern town, I was 8 to 9 every Saturday and 1 to 2 more on Sunday that I got to watch. And when WCW closed down, we were stuck with 1. So I'm very grateful to Tony Khan. However, Tony Khan comes across to me as, somebody that was a spoiled rich kid, kind of weird, didn't have a lot of friends, probably got picked on, and is now, and it's been said by a couple of different people, playing with action figures like you wouldn't, like you did as a kid. And he's Sting. Sting's a good example. He's a big fan of the 90s, and he got to bring in somebody that's an icon that he looked up to, that he, thoroughly enjoyed watching wrestle, Ric Flair in the NWO days. And the thing with Tony Khan, that having access to people smarter than you is a blessing. It's not a curse. And I don't think he's realized that quite yet. He, for being a fan of the 90s, if you watch the course of AEW, it's like, do you want to be WCW 2.0? Do you want to be ECW? Do you want to be New Japan? What do you want to be? You can't be a combination of all three and maintain your niche audience or bring in further people. When he first announced AEW, if he would have just come out and said something to the effect of, we're not trying to compete. There's a group of people over here that don't like what the WWE is doing. We want to be that alternative. If you go back in the annals of history, Paul Heyman never tried to be WWE or WCW. He was like, we're not WWE, we're not WCW, we're ECF and W. No problem with that. But from day one, they started off with, between him and other top talent taking shots at King Kong for whatever reason that they wanted to do that. And then his tweets, and it's funny, Danny mentioned Jim Cornette, not listening to him, but Jim Cornette's public enemy number one to the hardcore AEW fan. But notice when Tony Khan tweets and he goes after people, who doesn't he go after? Not once. If you go back and you search his Twitter and his social media post, not once has he went after Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette was the guy he went after to try to come in and help him. Jim's like, no thanks, man. I don't want any part of this shit show you're about to start. Because you talk to him. I've listened to Cornette. And the thing about the fans is they take these stupid ass headlines without doing their research. You go listen to Bischoff. Go listen to Bruce Pritchard. Go listen to Jim Cornette. You got to filter the entertainment part out. It's wrestling. It's still entertainment. They're trying to entertain a fan base. And what fans don't want to hear is that if you want to, you solely Jim Cornette, I'd have to look at Eric Bischoff's numbers, but Jim Cornette does more downloads every week than all the Tony shows put together. It's a fact. You talk about the stuff with CM Punk and all these new people he's brought in. CM Punk, this is WrestleMania week. And CM Punk, when on his part of Raw, not this week, but the week before, with the segment with Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins, Raw did about a 1.7, which is what they've been averaging for a while. CM Punk segment jumped up 500,000 to 2.2 million people watching that 15, 20-minute segment with CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and Drew McIntyre. That is more than Collision does. That is more than Rampage does by himself. And then AEW fans, CM Punk sucks. He's not my favorite guy in the world either, but he's a draw. You got this great storyline going on in WWE right now for WrestleMania with The Rock and Cody Rhodes and Roman and Seth. And who the hell are people talking about? The guy that's not even wrestling. He's going to be commentating on one match. He may get involved, he may not. Who knows? I know they're setting him up with Drew and maybe Seth down the road. And you go back, and I know I'm all over the place, but it's like Tony, in my opinion, he's got people he can listen to, but he listens to the wrong people. I mean, Dave Meltzer, I don't know if any of you guys take what he says to, enjoy it or whatever.
Hell no.
Well, there's some people take that shit seriously. And, anybody that's been successful in the wrestling business for the past 30 years has said what a cancer he is. It don't matter who you like and dislike. You can find somebody you don't like that said it, and you can find somebody you like that said it. But, he's tweeting out the other day about, after the CM Punk interview, how he had texted Tony. What the hell do you have his number for? You don't need Tony. He does not need Tony's number. But how he texted Tony about how this was going to be an issue with Colt Cabana and CM Punk in the locker room, and how the locker room was going to take sides, do whatever, and he needed to get it under control. I mean, I don't disagree with him, but the fact that he had Tony Khan's number, and then I'll go just separate. Somebody had asked him a question the other day on Twitter, and I was trying to actually look for it because I was going to read it verbatim, but I couldn't find it. I don't know if he deleted it or not, but he quote tweeted it. Somebody asked him how, with Andre being undefeated and blah, blah, blah for so long, how he was protected in title matches. This dude answered that, well, yeah, he wrestled Race and he wrestled Inoki and he wrestled Flair a couple times, but, Vince McMahon would never put him in a match for the championship because he didn't want baby faces going at it, and how Bruno really wanted to wrestle him, but he never got his title shot in the WWF because they didn't want to put him in that position. Adam, what did we cover for the last 5 weeks?
WrestleMania.
What's known as the biggest WrestleMania of all time?
WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant.
Was that for the championship?
That was for the championship.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then he got his rematch on the main event, not Saturday night's main event, but the main event, which is still the highest rated wrestling show that's ever been on TV to this day. It drew over 13 million people. And then he got the other shot that he got. Oh no, that was when he actually, the whole referee thing, he won the title, gave it to DiBiase, set up the tournament. But yeah, I just looked at that and like, I thought you were supposed to know everything about this. Never mind. I'm not even going to give it the time of day. But this is the people that Tony is listening to. And, like I said, God bless him. I've enjoyed AEW, the good, the bad, and the ugly from day one. I was so excited to get another promotion. And the funny thing is these fans go back and forth, and when the boys and the girls they're friends. They're wanting each other to succeed. And you get on here and you see all these damn trolls that want to go at people for their opinion. Now, 95% of the people are just simply trolling because they have no life. They're sitting in their basement and couldn't get laid in a room full of bricks. The other 5% are just too lazy to educate themselves. And if you want to go back in the annals of history, we'll get away from Jim Cornette. We'll go to Eric Bischoff. And God help me, I'm going to defend Vince Russo. When did WCW start going down? They started going down after the merger because Time Warner, AOL Time Warner did not want the wrestling product. It's been very well documented. And Eric Bischoff fought back because he still thought he had Ted Turner to defend him in his back pocket. And I'm getting to Ted Turner for a reason here in a second. But, Ted Turner was relegated to an office in the back. He had no say in his own company anymore. And Bischoff fought back not knowing that. And then they let him go and they brought in Russo. And they're sitting there, they're handcuffing. And it's funny. They brought in Russo, who's a guy that's on WWTV, excuse me, writing porn star segments, writing DX segments, and then bring him over there and say, no, you can't do that here. Now, what the hell did you bring him in for? And, you can go through, just about any territory you want. But the one thing Tony Khan's got to realize is that if Jim Cornette had the money that Tony Khan had, Smoky Mountain would still be around. If Paul Heyman had the money Tony Khan has, ECW would still be around. Mm-hmm. Jim Crockett and ECW actually winded up in the same kind of situation. Jim Crockett thought they were doing great. And then his accountant told him he was $3 million in the hole. And he's like, how? He's like, well, this money doesn't come in till X amount of time, and you got to stop buying shit. Stop buying the plane. Stop doing X, Y, Z. And Jim Crockett said it before he died. He said if he'd been a better businessman, that he'd never had to sell. Paul Heyman was in the same boat. He was owed money from pay-per-views, but the pay-per-view companies knew that if they didn't pay him, he was going to go bankrupt. In bankruptcy court, they only had to pay pennies on the dollar. We know how that turned out. And then one of the things that really pissed me off that Tony Khan has said I don't even know, one of the things he said was that WWE had done something. And he's like, I got more money than Jim Crockett and I'm not going to put up with this shit. Mm-hmm. And then another one was, and this was the one that really got me. If Ted Turner knew half as much about wrestling as I did, they'd still be in business. You dumb son of a bitch. Ted Turner never claimed to know anything about professional wrestling. Ted Turner was a businessman, and he was very grateful to professional wrestling. He gave all the credit in the world to professional wrestling and Braves baseball for helping build his empire. He felt a debt of gratitude to professional wrestling, whether it be Crockett Promotions, Georgia Championship Wrestling, anything that was ever on TBS. He felt gratitude for it. And when Jim Crockett was going bankrupt, they did the deal, so he still had it on there. He never claimed to know anything about it. Now, Ted was the one that wanted to compete with Vince. He was the one that went to Bischoff and asked how they competed. And, Tony Khan claims to be a historian, but you want to sit there and talk about, Bischoff didn't make any money. Well, for the longest time, and, you can look it up in the book. It's not just Bischoff's word. It's in black and white. WCW was a Ted Turner property. They weren't getting the kind of revenue that these other shows are paid for. All their pay-per-view money went to the Turner Entertainment side of it, where the movies and all the other stuff was. They weren't bringing in all that ad money, and that was starting to be a thing right there when Bischoff first took over, and he had to find a way to cut corners and make money. And he actually went to them and said, hey, if we were on another network, they'd be paying us for this time. And, but so for people to say WCW was losing so much money, there's a lot more that goes into it than just them losing money, because they weren't getting paid for everything that WWE was getting paid for. And the bad thing is, Tony Khan, I'm a historian. I know everything. Really? You sound like a jackass. So my grade's an F.
And that was that was the brief rant and history lesson with Professor Jason. Well, let's move on to this then. And Danny, I'll get to you. I'll get to you with this, is because I want to kind of branch off of what Jason said about the difference now of with social media now with the absence of it back then, and the way Tony Khan speaks through social media. I want to get your thoughts on that, Danny. Do you feel like he needs someone to kind of take the phone away from him and be like, all right, Tony, I'll start doing your tweets from now on? Like, how do you feel about him kind of cutting back on being the tweeter?
Okay, first I have to take a deep breath from that random that history lesson. The only other person that can make me laugh like that is my sister. But Jason, that's one of the reasons why I'm in love with you. Okay, so but here's the thing, and I just want to give Tony Khan my own grade, and the letter today's grade, boys and girls, is brought to you by the letter D, and D is not for dandy. D is for not devastating, but D is for definitely you need some work. So I'm going to go with Connor. I'm going to give him a D. And the reason why is number one, when, oh my gosh, I've been on like pain meds for two things. So forgive me, I'm a little losing my train of thought. Okay. So when WCW closed in 2001, here we thought we were going to have an invasion. We had Guerrero, Malenko, Saturn, and Benoit over WCW. Buff Bagwell was there. Buff Bagwell was gone. That was like a blink of an eye. We were stuck with WWE, and it started getting really repetitive where we didn't have, anything that draws to, that product. And so then AEW comes around and we're like, oh, this is great. Oh, Jericho's in there. Oh, Mox is there. It's great. And I give Tony Khan an A-B for his talent because he's loaded with talented people, and an A for effort to create something different. But I give him a D because it's like, okay, I have a wrestling company. Okay, well, wait, what? Okay. And I've said this before, but Tony Khan reminds me of my old boss that I had last year when I worked at my preschool. And this was a company that had no leadership standards for anything. And I'm going to go back to 8 years ago. I'm in a 2-year-old classroom. 2-year-olds are little hellions, but they're fun. It's like talking to a brick wall that answers you. And I had some serious issues going on in my classroom. Among them was a co-teacher who called in almost every other day. And leadership is like, oh, what? Don't do that again. What? Okay. Nothing happened. We had so much drama that was caused, by the decisions leadership made. Among one of them was my co-teacher who got pregnant by a coworker's boyfriend who also worked there. Yeah, that's like literally the drama that was caused because leadership, they terminated her once for her attendance, brought her back because they were so desperate for talent, if you would, for staff, gave her to me. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I need someone here who's going to be consistent, because what it does is it ruins the consistency for the kids, but then it also ruins the customer service piece because families are like, well, who's in the classroom with my child? And when I had staff advocating for me and, advocating for myself, leadership ignored it. They terminated her again, brought her back. And that's when all this drama started. And, I've got different things that are going on. Point here is that leadership is turning a blind eye because they're all friends. Tony Khan needs to have standards. He doesn't have any. He does, but he doesn't. Like, he wants this product to work. Okay, well, let's look at what you have backstage. You've got Paul White. You've got Dean Malenko, I think, is still a producer. You've got Jim Ross, for God's sakes. You've got Jericho. You have, who else do you have back there? You've got Jake Roberts. I
think they still have Jerry Lynn too. Jerry Lynn is still backstage.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, that's another name. You have how much talent that you have. You've got, if you do all the math and all the years that these guys have been in the industry, you're talking at least 200 years of experience that would serve well for a team of EVPs. So then you've got a guy who, okay, again, you watch his interviews, watch him talk. It's like he doesn't really have a personality, and he's just very rigid and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost afraid to talk on camera. Like, he tries to be so hard to be something he's not. And, he's sitting there and he's like, oh, well, okay, we're going to do this and do that. Have a plan of what you're going to do for starters, and don't make it, the announcement before it happens. So it's like, it's the announcement, before the first announcement, before next week's announcement, yesterday, after that last week's announcement type thing. And it's like, yeah, it's like this announcement. You feel like when he talks, you're, on a carousel or whatever. And it's almost want to make you dizzy. Well, again, here's a guy who signed his friends to run his business. Look what happens. Let's talk jewelry. Let's talk the deeper the cut, the more clear the diamond. You've got the diamond coming in CM Punk next to the cubic zirconia Young Bucks in the same case. The cubic zirconia, my God. Oh, we're God's gift to wrestling. Oh, well, we're friends with the boss. We can do whatever we want. They might have said, hey, you know what? We can work with Punk, and that's fine. But when Punk got there, it was like, oh my God, we can't work with him. We don't like him. We're jealous. Let's outdo a shine. These are two guys that can't even handle a match, that take frequent breaks during a 6-man match because they cannot handle a real physical match, that are carried by their opponents. And they call themselves pro wrestlers. So then they're in there, and then they decide, well, you know what? Let's start talking about him. Let's make everything hell for him. Okay. So then they got their little buddy Paige to go after him. Okay. That doesn't work. Punk gets suspended. Punk speaks his mind. Punk says what he's feeling at the media scrum. Okay. The guys couldn't manage a target. And to be honest with you, I can kind of see that happening. And I'm just sitting here like, whoa, okay. So, and that was the media scrum. Well, then he comes back, then there's more issues. So then they can't, Tony Khan talks to them, they get suspended. Who do they have go in there? The little midget JP, Jack Perry, who I think my nephew is 10 and he's taller than Jack Perry. My other nephew is 14. He's definitely taller. I think I'm taller than Jack Perry and I'm 5'4", but you've got Jack Perry and the Real Glass comment. So what do bullies do? They use people to get under other people's skin. There you go. Where was Tony Khan when these two were talking to the dirt sheets? Where was Tony Khan with a policy for his team, his wrestlers, that, okay, we're not going to put up with this, to make it a high school environment? I've been in environments like that, which is why I stopped teaching. And it's, it's just one of those things where have a plan, know where you're going, have consequences, have policies, because if you don't, people are going to walk all over you. You're not going to draw any eyes to your product, and your ratings are going to go down.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all your guys' points. I mean, from my take right now with Tony, when AEW launched, I think I got in maybe the right at when Moxley showed up at Double or Nothing. I think that's where I really got into it, because I was wondering where he was in WWE, and I still wasn't like WWE's product at that point. And so when he showed up, I was like, holy crap. I said, I got to check out AEW more now. And so I was watching that, and I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the product. I was enjoying the stories, the matches, all that stuff. It was coming together. And it was something different. And I'm going to go based on what Jason was talking about in the old days with the territories and all this stuff. I was an ECW kid. I loved ECW. And I remember the times when I would hear about, Paul Heyman mentioning that. I mean, you watch that documentary, Rise and Fall of ECW, and all these guys just asking for a paycheck before they go to another company. He's like, I can't compete with their money. I can't. And that's what Tony Khan is to me. He's a businessman who understands the sport, but needs the help to get his product back on its feet, if that makes sense. I'm saying this right now. On Connor's point that he had mentioned to us about it, it's kind of faltered a little bit, and like WWE is starting to get a little hot now with their stories and all that stuff. But that's the thing, is we need Tony to have someone in there to help write. It's good he's got new people in there to write for other stuff. I mean, he brought in that Peppermint, I believe is her name. She came in to write for the women's division, and you can see it start to manifest on screen right now in the women's division.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting a good thing going with Toni Storm, Thunder Rosa, Mariah May, and everything. You're getting a good thing going with Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, Julia Hart, and Mercedes Moné. So you're starting to see it. And now you just need someone on the men's side. And this is why I keep going back to Scott D'Amore. And here's the thing. As much as it pains me to say it, I honestly think Scott D'Amore should come in and kind of take the position that Paul has at WWE, almost like a COO / the creative over Tony, because Scott was going off the chain when he was over in TNA. If you watch TNA with Scott in charge, holy cow, the matches were good. The pay-per-views were great. Low production, but holy cow, they reminded me of old school ECW pay-per-views. That's what I remember watching these TNA pay-per-views under Scott D'Amore, because his writing was good. He worked well with everybody backstage. He's great with talent. So you bring in someone like a Scott D'Amore coming in to work with AEW, and Tony Khan can go do whatever else he needs to do for the business-wise. That's the streaming services. You know, he can go and just start working on the streaming services. He can go work on more shows and other tours. And that's why he brought that other guy in from WWE that does live events. He can work with him. Where can we go here? Where can we go there? And that gives Tony more time to open up more and let someone that has that skill to write great stories and work with talent to get the creative back on the screen. The one thing I have an issue with Tony is his social media. Tony does need to know how to turn it back down a little bit, because Tony does come off as a little childish on social media. I mean, you don't always have to go after your competition. Like Jason's saying, be your own thing. You don't have to be a WCW 2.0 or an ECW or a Jim Crockett promotion. You got to be your own thing. And that's what you were when you showed up in 2019. You were an alternative to WWE, because that was basically the only game in pro wrestling that had anything big global. I mean, you still had Impact, and you still had New Japan. You still had all those smaller promotions, but none of them had the money. They did not have the backing. They did not have the TV. They had nothing, you know. And now you have Tony coming in. People saying, oh, it's his daddy's money. It's like, okay, where do you think you get a loan from? You get a loan from someone because you're investing in a business. It's like, listen, I'm doing this business. Just invest this into it. Let's see if we can take it off. That's what Tony Khan basically does with his dad's money. And people are, oh, it's his daddy's money. Okay, cool. Look what he's doing with it. He created a promotion, and now it's 5 years in. It's still going. Are the ratings great? No. But that comes back to creative. That comes back to someone in charge of writing and not leaving it up to talent to do their own stuff. You know, and I'm agreeing with Danny. But I'm 50-50 on your agreeing, Danny, right now. And I will say this about the Young Bucks. Yes, they don't do a lot in the ring, but it's part of their character work now. They're now that heel EVPs where they're like, we'll send someone else out there. Like you said, a bully sends someone else out there. That's what the Young Bucks are doing with Okada. They're like, we'll let him do the work. We'll just sit back, take the credit, all that. That's their character. But I do agree that they are useless backstage. I'm going to have to say on that. I mean, their EVP roles have really diminished a little bit. They're only using it now as a gimmick. Back when they were just the Young Bucks, back in their indie days, I loved watching their matches in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, you know, but now they've just become a shell of themselves. And so what the problem is they're so in tight with Tony. All that situation that happened with CM Punk, it was very unfortunate. I'm like many, was very happy when I saw CM Punk come back to wrestling after 7 years and do AEW. It was something different because I knew he was unhappy at WWE. I knew that. Reading all his interviews and saying that he got fired on his wedding day, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I would have animosity towards that company too. And him come back to AEW. But I kind of see where his interview comes in of saying, I liked everybody, and especially Tony. Tony was a nice guy. But as a nice guy, you also have to be the boss. You can't be friendly with everybody. I mean, you learn this in any job when you're the boss. I mean, I'm sorry. If you're a high school teacher, you're not going to be buddies with the students, right? If you're a corrections officer, you're not going to be buddy with the inmates at the jail. You still have to enforce rules. You still have to do everything in the procedure. And you still have to make them follow those rules, those procedures, and stick to a T and not be their best friends. You can be friendly with them, but to be buddy with them is what kills momentum between a boss and all the employees in the company. And so with Tony, my big issue right now and the grade that I give him, and it's a very lenient grade. I'm giving him a C minus, not quite a D, but a C minus. Because he's keeping this company still afloat. That's the only difference I'm saying after 5 years. Because a lot of people were saying, oh, AEW is not going to last long. And they were saying this in year 2, year 3. And it's 5 years and they're still here. And I keep comparing it to TNA. They're like, well, people were saying TNA wasn't going to last long. Now it's been almost 20 years since it's been around, since 2003, 2004, when it launched, when WCW closed its doors. A lot of those talents did not want to go to WWE, so they wanted to do something different. So NWA and all those guys formed that TNA NWA promotion, and the NWA World Title was defended on the TNA. It wasn't even TNA Championships yet. It was the NWA World Title still being defended on TV. I mean, it's unheard of that you see it on TV anymore, but now you're seeing it in TNA. So that's why I'm giving Tony a little bit of an increased grade with a C minus, because he's still keeping it afloat, but he's just got to learn that line. Jason, you look like you wanted to butt in with something.
Oh no, I'm listening, but I'll say this: I'm still interested to see. I'm concerned that a TV deal has not been announced or struck yet. With it coming up, October, I guess, is when it's due.
Yeah.
And his father, and and you look at a lot of successful business people, from Vince McMahon himself to Trump to some of these other high dollar people. They got their money, whether it was a loan or whether it was paid back over time, whatever the case may be, from their family. I don't have an issue with that. He gave, from what I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony had $100 million inheritance and his dad decided to give it to him so he could watch him spend it. And his dad was just, his net worth just went up to like 12 point something billion between the Jags and the soccer team and everything else they got going on. And the point that I make with all this is AEW is going to be around as long as they want to continue to put money into it. They have the money to put into it, which I'm glad of, because again, I mean, I went for 20 years, with one promotion. I mean, because God knows how hard it's been to find TNA on TV. But you go back, what Tony's really good at is finding matches of going, oh man, this sounds exciting to watch. But he does not know how to produce a TV show. And it's where I go back to having people smarter than you around you is a blessing, not a curse. And so again, his dad, I know he spent more than $100 million now. It's easily done. But he, like I said, it'll be around as long as they want to put money into it. And if a TV deal is not struck, where they're bringing in that high dollar income, how much longer it might not even be up to him. It might be up to his dad, to where he says, okay, I'm done. I'm not putting any more money into this. So it could be out of his hands at any point. You don't know what that structure is behind the scenes. And he should know from being around the football team, around the soccer team. Yeah, his dad owns it. He's not running it. He's got a general manager. He's got people that hire and fire the coaches. And when, has the general manager been fired? Absolutely. Happens in football every day. But, he's still bringing in somebody that knows more than he does about the, whether it be the football team or soccer or his other businesses for that matter. You talk about, running the TV show and running the storylines. I'll be completely honest with you. From what I've seen, as hot as the Roman Reigns, Rock, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins stuff is on TV right now, if you were to bring that over to AEW television, if you were to bring Joe Anoa'i, Dwayne Johnson, Cody Runnels, I mean, hell, the audience had turned on Cody Rhodes before he ever left. Whether it was because decisions he made, booking decisions Tony made, you know, you'll never know. And, you know, Tyler Black over to you're going to get an initial rating from those 4 guys coming over, but it wouldn't last. I mean, nobody, even CM Punk, who brought in those big numbers at first, it still started dwindling down. You go back and you talk about the Young Bucks 2 weeks ago, you know, and you can find these on WrestleNomics if you want to look at them. You can find the quarter hours. You know, the program started off at 946,000, something like that, close to the million mark. And then it started dropping slowly. And then the Young Bucks segment was the lowest rated segment. You know, it got down, you know, during their match, dropped down to 711,000 viewers. And it's, you know, and I don't look at that to down the stuff. I actually look at that stuff to go, am I being too critical? You know, when I'm watching certain, you know, when I'm watching certain stuff, because I grew up on stuff I like, and I've said it to the younger people these days that, you know, in 20 years down the road, you're going to look back at this and be like, man, things were so much better back then. People romanticize the past. It's just what we do. It's human nature. But, you know, you talk about, I know I'm all over the place, but it's just, well, I'll give you, you know, when Adam Cole and the Undisputed Kingdom, you know, turned on MJF, prime example. And then you know, Wardlow gets squashed by Samoa Joe. And then you take Bennett and Taven, who go out there and get beat, not by the actual tag team of Best Friends, but affiliate. I know it's Orange Cassidy, and it's not a knock on him, but it's, you know, they're not a team like him and Chuck Taylor, like Trent and Chuck Taylor are. And then you have the ROH tag team champions lose to guys that have only teamed a handful of times. And it's like, I mean, really, the Undisputed Kingdom was supposed to be this huge thing, and nobody cares. And it's because of the way they've been booked. They've been booked like clowns. And, you know, like I said, you can like or hate CM Punk all you want to, but if you go back and you listen to the interview he did on Colt Cabana's podcast after the WWE stuff, and you go and listen to what he just did on Monday, he goes from sounding like a bitter guy that had his termination papers sent to him on his wedding day to an adult in the room. Because he actually said, you know, he defended Jack Perry. He said, you know, he took something professional I said, made it personal. I can't say nothing. I've done the same thing. I mean, yeah, talked very well about Tony Khan. What would you do if you saw Tony? I would go, oh, hey, Tony. You know, he said it was 5 or 6 people that caused him misery in AEW. Seems to be a recurring theme to me. And a boss, you know, Tony Khan wants to make these huge announcements all the time, but he seems awkward when he does it. And not everybody's built to be on TV. You know, not everybody. And let me just preface this by saying that if I compare Tony to or anything else or bring up Vince McMahon's name, we're talking about the businessman. I mean, everybody talks about how nice Tony is. Not, you know, that seems to be a recurring theme, you know, but so he's by far a much better human being than Vince McMahon is. I mean, hell, Satan could come in and probably be a better human being than Vince McMahon is. But so that's not, you know, comparing all Vince is so much better. But I mean, let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, you go back in the annals of history, the businessman. We're talking about a guy that fired the Ultimate Warrior after a main event at SummerSlam, that had plans in the future for him. We're talking about a guy that told Steve Austin, okay, go to hell home. I don't care. I don't need you. You know, we're talking about a guy that, you know, when, you know, Scott Hall was never as big in WWE as he was in WCW with the NWO, but Razor Ramon was a pretty top star, and Diesel had been world heavyweight champion. I'm not paying you that. Go. I don't care. I don't need you. And, you know, Tony just seems like he's got that. That's what I kind of started at the beginning of, you know, he was probably an awkward child that was spoiled, didn't have a lot of friends, and he wants everybody to like him. And that's just not the way successful people operate. You know, now successful people that aren't a psychopath might hope people like them, but at the end of the day, it's not going to make or break their business decision. So, like I said, you know, the undisputed Kingdom is kind of, to me, a good example of, you know, I don't care what name they brought in right now. The initial debut is going to get a rating, but the way the booking has been, it's not sustainable.
Right, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about the booking talent, signing talents, and I'll start with you, Connor. In your opinion, what has been some of the best signings for AEW, but bad booking decisions once those signees have come on? In your opinion, and I think we know you're going to say one. I mean, we're all going to say probably the same, probably number one, same person. But for you, Connor, what would you say? You know, the signees they brought in, and then just the booking completely ruined them.
Well, where do I start?
Not with Marina Shafir.
Yeah, not Marina Shafir.
I don't know why the hell they still got her. Like, they just released 10 people. She should have been on that list. I don't know how she was.
I was thinking about that when I saw that, and I was thinking about you, kind of running.
She's married to Roddy, right?
Yeah,
yes, that's why she's still there.
That's why she wasn't on the list.
But this is tough.
I bring the tough questions, Connor.
Can I give him an alternate question?
Yeah, give him an alternate question, Jason.
Name me somebody, because I got about 3 or 4 I can think of off the top of my head. Name me somebody you think has actually been booked better in AEW, with the exception of Toni Storm, because I know that's who everybody's going to say first. Toni Storm's done 10 times more in AEW than she ever did in WWE. So let's take chin up, out, watch for the shoe. Okay, got my shirt on tonight, representing. But besides Toni Storm, tell me somebody that's been booked better in AEW than they were in WWE.
I'd say Pac. In WWE, he was treated. I mean, they're towards the end. He is what he is now, but in AEW, he's just a lot more. Like, we already knew he was talented, but he's able to show more of what he can really do as a top star. But someone that I think that I want to say Edge, but they ended up doing better with that. I know there's someone. I've been saying this stuff for a while, and I can't come up with one person. Yeah, at least makes me look a fool. Jason, you can go. Come back to me.
The only reason I asked is because you know, Edge is a toss-up. I'm waiting to see what they do with him. I told you I didn't want the TNT title on him because I don't want it to overshadow the world title, because people, there's going to be some people that look at him as a bigger star than Samoa Joe. That's just, the way some fans are. You don't have to agree, disagree. It's just, but you go and look at all the stars they brought in. The Hardys have been made to look like idiots. Keith Lee has been made to look worse than he ever did in WWE.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got my pick now.
All right, Adam Cole. I mean, he had a couple of good matches with MJF, and then has looked just putrid. I mean, it looks like he hadn't been in a gym since he left NXT. But go ahead, Connor. I'll let you finish.
Am I freezing up to you guys?
You're kind of slow, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Let me come back.
Okay.
All right. Well,
all right, Danny. We'll go to Danny then, I guess, and then we'll come back to Jason. Danny, what about you?
Okay. Person who I think has been booked better now than in WWE. And I swerve when I drive, and I swerve when I drive. See,
I will agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I'm going to go Swerve, because this is a guy, they had him in, what was that?
Hit Row.
Yeah, thank you.
Hit Row.
They had him with Hit Row, and you could just see for every trio, there's always going to be one person that's your breakout star, and that was Swerve.
And that's why that group didn't work when they brought him back.
Yeah.
Connor, coming back to you. Yeah, we can hear you now. You're good. Yes.
All right. I want to say the Hardys, just because Jason said the Hardys. I could go on a rant full of that, but Andrade, Tony Khan said that he did everything he could to keep him. I feel like he tried keeping him way too late. When he debuted, even Tony said that this guy is a future world champion in AEW, and on commentary they say that every champion should be worried. And then when he got there, they didn't really do anything with him. I mean, he had some good matches with Pac, and then he after that, I mean, they put him in the AHFO, whatever that thing was. And then I know he was injured some, but I thought that he could have done a lot more. The Hardys, they're I've probably said this a lot on here. Especially Jeff Hardy. He's one of my all-time favorites. As a kid for Halloween, I'd have the arm sleeves, color my hair. I'd wrestle like Jeff Hardy in the trampoline. Like that's someone that I'll always like watching. And before he got injured, they were just burying him left and right. Like he lost against Swerve, he lost against Moxley, he lost against Sammy, he lost against like I don't get why they want to bury someone like that. But there's a lot of people that they bring in. Like they're pretty good at first. Like their debut's pretty good, and then once they get them into a feud, a few weeks later you just forget that they're even there. Keith Lee, that's a pretty good example. Keith Lee. The main one for me is probably Andrade besides the Hardys.
Well, the thing I'll say about Andrade is, you had a lot of people that were excited and wanted to come to AEW. Andrade wasn't really one. He got released. It wasn't that his contract was up and he decided to go try his, talents in greener pastures. He was ready to go back when Vince fired him and released him, whatever you want to call it. And then Triple H took back over and Vince was gone. There was a couple of those ears that perked up. William Regal. And that's, that's another bad booking decision. I mean, why the hell are we still calling them the BCC after all this time when Regal was gone? That should have been that they should have just, between the three of them, they could have came up with another name, because you're still, to me, when you're calling him the Blackpool Combat Club, you're talking about a guy that walked out the door and went back to WWE. Now, granted, he wanted to go work with Triple H. They've been close for a long time, and he wanted to work with his son in the NXT. All that's understandable. That's, he was another one, had nothing bad to say about Tony. He was appreciative, didn't gripe that he couldn't be on TV for a year. He was very appreciative Tony let him out of his contract. But again, why do you want to keep something around that none of them guys are from England? Blackpool. To me, it doesn't make any sense. They could have renamed that group pretty quickly, once Regal left, but now it's been there for a while. With Andrade, though, he wanted to get back to his wife. He wanted to be back on the road with his wife. It probably made it a little easier on him when Rick came in. He had family there, but I can see him as world champion in AEW. I cannot see him as world champion in WWE simply because of the language factor. He's not Santos Escobar, who's very clear on the microphone. To me, they're the same guy. Just Santos speaks a lot clearer. They're both good in the ring and, very innovative. I think Santos is a much better heel than he ever was babyface doing the LWO thing. But to me, they're the same guy. Just it's the language barrier with Andrade that's going to hinder him to a world title, in my opinion.
And I'll go with you guys on that one. It's someone that that you just mentioned, Jason, and we all said it. Toni Storm. I think Toni Storm reinventing herself in AEW has been one of the best things I've ever seen. Besides her stuff in WWE, because it was kind of getting lame there towards the end. With, I think she was feuding with Charlotte Flair at the point when she was leaving.
They did that. Charlotte shoved a pie in her face. Then like a week or two later, she got her revenge and shoved a pie in Charlotte's face. And then they released her. It was like nothing.
Yeah. So it was pretty bad. And just seeing her reinvent herself and getting a good storyline in AEW has been really good. I kind of agree with Connor to Pac. I mean, you look at someone like Pac when he was Neville in WWE, and yeah, he was a high flyer and he was kind of like the superhero kind of look. And, he won the Cruiserweight title, but the things he has done in AEW with forming Death Triangle, by winning the trios titles with them, being international champion. And so back when it was the All Atlantic, and so just seeing him reinvent himself. Again, you look at guys they have dropped the ball on since coming over here from WWE. I will mention two names, and they're in the same group: Buddy Matthews, Malachi Black. What they did in WWE was very fun to watch them in NXT and all that, and even on WWE television. But when they started out in AEW, and Malachi came over, feuded with Cody. I think this is what we go back to of when we had mentioned, I think Jason, you had mentioned of when the fans turning on Cody for something. It was basically this. The fans were behind Black the entire time, and they did not want him to feud with Cody. But because that was just because they wanted to cheer him, but then they're supposed to cheer both people. That fan base didn't like that and everything like that. I think that's where the heat started for Cody, and people wanted him to turn heel at some point. And so when Malachi came over, I was thoroughly enjoying his character. I think once he started forming the House of Black with Buddy King, Brody King. Sorry, I said Buddy King. I put Buddy and Brody together, but Brody King. And, they did their tag team spiel, like their tag team thing that they did on the Indies when he was Tommy End and everything like that. So they did all that. But then once they bought Buddy Matthews over, I was like, oh, dude, this is so good because they had worked together, Malachi and Buddy. And so seeing all three together, I was like, dude, this is great. We're going to see them. They're going to do wonders. And yeah, they won the trios titles, but they have just completely fallen off on them. On Malachi and Buddy, they're not in the tournament anymore.
I think one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason, is I put those two in the same category as Andrade. They didn't have their contract expire and go jump for greener pastures or more money. They were both released, and they both have wives. One was in a very prominent role in WWE, and those are two that, unless he just offers them stupid money, to stay, that you're going to see when their contract is up, they go back, and they're not going to have anything bad to say. It's just they want to travel with their fiance, with their wife. They want to that's what they want to be around, and they'll take what they can get. And they both I think have a lot of faith in Hunter as to what he can do with them versus what Vince was giving him when Hunter was out with his heart issue. Like, again, it goes back to nothing bad against AEW, but Andrade and these two guys never wanted to leave to begin with.
Right. Well, and like I said, I agree with that. Go ahead, Connor.
I do remember seeing a lot of stuff that Malachi, he actually requested his release a few times in WWE when Vince was in charge, because they weren't doing anything with him. Like, the best thing they did on the main roster was him and Buddy Matthews, maybe. But NXT, he was booked good. Once Vince got I remember seeing that he requested his release multiple times and it got denied. But he is a Triple H guy. Triple H brought him in. He brought Andrade in. So a lot of those guys trust Triple H more than they do Vince McMahon or Tony, probably. Not that that's a bad thing. That's just who got them to the spotlight. Like, a lot of these guys wouldn't be known if Triple H wouldn't have put these guys, like, not discrediting that they weren't a big name before, but they just got put on a bigger stage. But a lot of those guys trust Vince. I mean, they trust Triple H more than they do Vince.
Well, we kind of touched on this last week for a very, very small second. We didn't delve deep into it, but it's like when Ring of Honor was on fire, Triple H just kind of stepped in and said, give me NXT. I'm going to out Ring of Honor. And he did, because he had the money to be better production. And he brought all those guys in between, Red Dragon, Shinsuke Nakamura, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, when they were in the tag team with Alexa Bliss managing, because that's when him and Alexa were dating, bringing all the women's revolution that started there with Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, Bayley. He did a lot of good things, and Vince came in and tore it apart once he went, and he was out with his surgery, and Tony took a lot of those Triple H guys, William Regal being one. Because Vince come along and is like, what's going on at home with your son-in-law, bro? You got rid of all his people. I mean, two people we hadn't talked about, one in AEW, one it's not, but was Jeff Jarrett and the Road Dogg. I mean, Vince come in and got rid of all Triple H's people, Road Dogg included, and then he hired Jeff Jarrett to run live events. And when Triple H got back, one of the first things he did was fire Jeff Jarrett and bring back, Brian James. And I mean, you're slowly, NXT is by far not what it was at one point, but you see that slow coming back. And, a lot of those guys, like we're talking about with Malachi Black, with Buddy Matthews, they trust Paul is who they trust. And they, just because they haven't said nothing publicly or went on a 4-year-old Twitter rant like some people, doesn't mean they don't see the shit show that's going around them with other people. And they're just, like I said, that, from what I recall, Malachi's also requested his release a couple of times in AEW and been denied. And it started when Paul took back over, which to me speaks volumes, because he's probably honestly making more money in AEW than he was in WWE. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but that's just an educated guess on my part. But again, like I said, all those NXT guys that he pillaged out of Ring of Honor and the Indies that brought in and made NXT honestly, it had a lot of the fan base of what AEW has now, because they were so into the kind of matches they were putting on. And, a lot of those guys want to go back to Triple H. I think Adam Cole might be one of them. You don't know, but Adam was one that did not want to re-sign because Paul was no longer running NXT. Vince and Bruce were. And that's why he only extended his contract a couple of months to blow off the feud with Kyle O'Reilly and put Kyle over. Then Kyle also wanted to leaving as well. So,
yeah, and that's the thing I want to talk about. We keep on talent, and I want to go to Danny for this question because she's the diva Danny. But let's talk about women talent in AEW. And, Tony Khan basically, allowing Jade to let her contract run out and basically, not resign her and let her go to WWE and be and start doing massive stuff over there. I mean, obviously she's going to be part of WrestleMania weekend, all of that. She made her big debut at the Royal Rumble. I mean, no better place to do it than the Royal Rumble. So is there any female star on AEW's roster that you would feel that if let go or not re-signed by Tony's hand, do you see them going to WWE following Jade kind of there? And would it feel bad? Like you would react to Tony, why'd you let this one go? Is there one women wrestler on the roster you could think of, Danny?
I'm going to say just kind of piggyback of what Jason just said about Adam Cole. The doctor will see you now. Britt, I could see, again, if Adam Cole decided, you know what, I'm done with this gimmick, Undisputed Era. We were all like, oh my God, who's under the mask? They made it such a big deal, kind of like that Aces and Eights thing back in TNA, when Bully Ray ended up being the head of it. And that was like the first thing I could think of. And back then I watched TNA every week. And here we were like, okay, this is going to be so good. We all know the best devil to fill that would have been Punk for obvious reasons. And the other two, honestly, we all thought were FTR, but you could see different people under that mask, almost literally like every other week. It was almost like, okay, you know what? You're going to wear the devil's mask. You're going to wear it this week. No, you're going to wear it. And to come up with Adam Cole as the leader, Rod Strong, Taven Bennett, and Be Still My Heart, was kind of for one. Number two, where has it gone? It hasn't gone anywhere. Max, we don't even know when Max is coming back. There's speculation that he's going to end up on Raw the day after WrestleMania, or that he's going to appear at WrestleMania and cost Cody his dream. We had the storyline that just kind of went nowhere. And if Adam Cole were to go back to WWE, now that Vince is no longer running it, Paul's in charge, Britt could follow. Britt and Jade, Britt and Becky, Britt and Naomi, Britt and Charlotte when Charlotte comes back, Britt and the other one, Britt and Bianca. So I think to a degree that would kill Tony Khan if Britt Baker ended up going to WWE.
Yeah, it's huge too to think about that. Like Jason said, if Adam Cole goes back, Britt follows, because obviously we talk about, Malachi and
Zelina
and Zelina, and then you got Andrade and Charlotte, wanted to, travel together,
and don't forget about Buddy and Rhea. You still got Buddy and Rhea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Buddy and Rhea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, if he's going to go, I guarantee you Britt's like, listen, although here's my issue with Britt Baker. The schedule in WWE may not work for her schedule at her dentist job.
Right.
Is the only issue. And that's the thing you'd have to look at. Would WWE be lenient on that? Be like, you also have this other career, because they do kind of tell everybody in their company, they're like, yeah, well, you got to work on our schedule.
Well,
Jason,
she
you
had said a
look like
while
you were-
back that she was cutting back on the dentistry to focus on her wrestling career for a little while. So
Okay, then that might change the perspective on it. That, yeah, maybe she could go over there, have some matches over there in WWE, on Raw, and SmackDown, NXT. There's some very talented women on NXT. I think Jason mentioned her, Tiffany Stratton. It's
Tiffy
you got
time.
some the Tiffy time. So yeah, it would be a shocker to see Britt Baker, considering she was the first woman signed to AEW when it debuted in 2019. And so we talk about that, but I want to move on as we're getting to, the hour and a half time. And, I want to get to something that we see all the time at the post conferences from every pay-per-view. And it's the awkwardness of Tony Khan sitting next to talent. There's great moments when he's sitting with talent, and then there's just awkward moments and he's just this,
You mean when he's like
and he's,
this?
when he sit. I think the best one, I think, is the one pay-per-view. I can't remember, but it was when he wore Tony Storm's hat
Storm
and
put the hat and
glasses.
glasses on him. That was
Yes, he looked hilarious. And he's like,
he's
"Dude,
like
this
this?
fits me." And he still was monotone underneath.
Like
I
that
was
was
like,
a
Tony,
little-
dude. I was like, I wanted to talk like Tony, but like, darling, you have to act like it's just like
I
that.
tell like you have to act much better than
Yes,
What's wrong with you people?
But to go on that, the post conferences, do you think it should change? And I'll start with you, Connor. Like how WWE does it, and I know we shouldn't say they should try to be like WWE, but there's times when maybe Tony doesn't have to be there for every person coming on stage. Every wrestler coming up. Would you feel more comfortable, Connor? And this is a question for everybody, but we'll start with Connor. If Tony kind of hung back and came out maybe last and kind of answered questions, kind of like how WWE does their post conferences.
At the last press conference for AEW, Revolution, they kind of did it in WWE style for the first time. They had Renee Paquette, the one going around saying, "It's your turn, your turn, your turn." But Tony was still there. If they would just, not totally like WWE, I know a lot of people are going to say, we didn't want to like WWE, but that's another thing. But if I was doing it, I would have each wrestler come out on their own, not with Tony there. Renee Paquette's the one, basically like how Byron Saxton does WWE. So it's Dave Meltzer from the worst wrestling news outlet in the world. Your question, then so on. And then at the very end, Tony comes out by himself, and that's that. Tony, I like Tony. I feel like a lot of people think that they hate him as a person, but, you can be a really good person and be a sucky boss. It's hard to, I don't know. I feel like, I'm not going to talk about that. I feel like some people are getting mad if I did.
No, do it anyway. Come on, we're here. Controversy creates cash.
Connor, let's do it.
Come on, controversy creates cash. Let's go.
If I can go on that tangent about
Look, man,
cotton
Bucks.
balls and basically pro wrestlers that dance like a collegiate cheer dance team in a wrestling match, then you could say what you need to say. And if you could say what you need to say about Marina Shafir, you can say this.
well, I
Come
was
on.
gonna say, after the way I started earlier, trust me, they're not gonna get pissed off at you.
I was gonna say, yeah, with Jason going off at Connor, trust me, you were in safe
It's
hands.
okay.
Buddy.
We love you. We understand.
I know a lot of people take offense to this, but it's not really a shot at Tony. At times, I really think that he has a learning disability. Not that that's a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
just by the way that he responds
Expresses
to questions and stuff like that. It's not a knock on him because I actually have autism. Not many people know that. I don't advertise that.
I'm on the spectrum and with ADHD.
It's not a bad thing. It's not. I know some people will take it as I'm just bashing for it, but sometimes he comes off that way. And it's not a bad thing at all. Uh, I just know people will spin that and they'll take it and whatever they want to take it with. But yeah, I think I think it would be best if he just came out at the end of it and did, because a lot of people look forward to asking Tony questions. You know, even though he doesn't answer them half the time, they look forward to asking Tony, like, TV deal, this and that. That's who people go the talk to. But I think him just kind of like Triple H does. He comes up by himself. Then once he's done, he's out, and the wrestlers come out. Yeah, I think there's ways of doing it to make Tony not look cringy or whatever. But that's my take on that.
Yeah, Jason, let's go with that. If they do it where Tony comes out by himself, would you rather see him come out the beginning and then leave, or would you want him to finish up the press conference?
I would want him to finish it. Let the talent talk about it. That way he can address, if need be, he can address anything that the talent has said before him and not have to come back out or not have to address it on Twitter. But I'll go back, the way you worded it was, we're not trying to get them to be WWE. And it goes back to what I said last week. No, we're not asking you to put on a WWE product. However, him hiring Jennifer Pepperman or the guy to run live events for backstage, I think is a great thing, because where you don't have to be WWE, the business model is sustainable. And, I don't know if I want to say that, I'd have to go back and watch him a little bit, some of his mannerisms a little bit more. I don't know if I would say he might have a learning disability. It goes back to what I said at the beginning about, I think he was a spoiled rich kid, and he's a little awkward because a lot of rich kids are sheltered and they're just around a certain group of people. And that, he does not look comfortable on TV, and that's okay. Yeah. But that goes back to where, I tell you where I really get aggravated with Tony Khan is, like, he seems to there's part of him that doesn't want the spotlight, but there's other parts that seems like his ego can't get enough. It's like, we don't need the announcers going, Tony Khan has made it official. A simple, well, that's official. These two guys are going to wrestle now. And it's like, they say it so quickly. It's just right there in the script. It's not him coming through the headset, because they're just like, Tony Khan, I just heard from Tony. No, you didn't. And it's like, I'll go back to one of the cringy things I saw when he named, I forgot who it was, Stokely Hathaway and somebody else that he named as the booking committee or whatever he said they were going to be for ROH.
Gary Landon.
And but as soon as it was done, he was like, as soon as he said it, he was like, and that word is final, except can be overridden by Tony Khan. Are we really going to talk about ourselves in the third person there, bro? Come on, man. But, and again, that's not a knock on him. Not everybody's built for TV. Yeah. I mean, I've DJ'd, I've announced stuff, and I did fine ring announcing. But if I had to go out there and cut a promo in front of, whether it's a 4,000 person AEW audience or, a 40,000 person or, 80,000 people in Wembley, would I freeze up? I don't know. Would I sound awkward? I don't know. I mean, when you get in front of people like that, you don't know how you're going to react if you're not accustomed to doing it. That was the one great thing about the territories back in the day of not having, worldwide television. They were in a studio audience of about, maybe 30, 40, 50 people, if that many, on a network that was, TBS, of course, took it across the country. But, you're on a local network, and you're able to practice, to build that character, to see what works and what doesn't, instead of being out there on national TV and just ruining yourself from the get-go because that particular gimmick didn't work. I mean, if you look over the annals of history, I mean, how many people started off with a horrible gimmick and then came back and made it work? I can think of two. Kane, because they put him under a mask and nobody knew. Well, we knew who he was, but the average person watching TV didn't know it was Isaac Yankem, DDS, or the Great Diesel. Mm-hmm. And then Bray Wyatt. I mean, from the Husky Harris gimmick. I mean, but most people, when they get stuck on TV and it doesn't work the first time, I mean, but I will say this, I'm glad he finally released some people. And it's not that I want to see anybody out of a job, but if you're not going to use somebody, especially if they're on a per appearance contract and not a weekly paycheck contract, I mean, if you know, he didn't ask for it, but you know, when Drew McIntyre got released, he was able to go reinvent himself, and you know, in Cody's words, from undesirable to undeniable. And they weren't going to release Cody. Cody said it before, you know, he was there because of nepotism, but he wasn't feeling it. He asked for his release. If they had not granted Cody his release, we wouldn't be getting what we're getting today. He would have been stuck in whatever mid-card gimmick they had him in for all these years because they didn't believe in him back then. He had to go back and prove himself. So I'm all for giving these guys and girls a chance because there's so much indie wrestling now that they can go out and make a paycheck every weekend between the Comic-Cons and being booked and working on themselves, working on their gimmick and finding something that works to where, you know, one of the major promotions will want them to come in. And I think with, you know, now with Scott D'Amore not being at TNA anymore, you know, their Motor City Machine Guns are leaving. They're rumored for AEW TV. I don't really care where they go. I want to be able to watch them all the time. I love watching Shelley and Sabin. So, you know, like I said, I don't want to see anybody without a job, but if you're not going to use somebody, you know, give them a chance to go do something. And, you know, again, I wish Tony would find an on-screen, you know, GM, authority figure, whatever the case may be. I mean, I think Nick Aldis has done an amazing job. I mean, for that matter, I think Adam Pearce, and I'm going to look forward to that little bit of stuff they throw in the middle of those two. At some point, we're going to get that match. And I'm gonna be one of them going, that's the match I want to see on the pay-per-view. That's two former NWA world champions going at it.
Champions, yep.
Those guys can go, but a lot of people don't realize it. So I'm gonna be the one sitting back. You could have, you know, Rock and Roman at SummerSlam, and I'm be like, no, I want to see this one. You know, if again, I'm repetitive, but not everybody's built for TV, and he seems to be one of those people. You know, you can go out and do your end of press conference after a show, comment on what talent said, on what the matches were, and, you know, TV deals, you know, questions for the owner that you get, but, you know, open it up a little bit, expand your horizon, sir.
Yeah. Danny, your take on the whole post-show conferences with Tony Khan.
Okay. First of all, the congregation is going to pray here on the All Elite Zone that Scott D'Amore does come to AEW. We pray for the Motor City Machine Guns, Sabin and Kelly. We pray that
Motor City.
Thank you. Sorry, it's my thing. Sorry, guys. And then we also pray that I can somewhere figure out where I can watch TNA in your name. We pray. Amen. Okay. So first things first, I again volunteer, Tony Khan, to do anything for you. Give me your phone, give me your Twitter, make me the GM. But then again, if you made me the GM, you'd be liable to get fines from FCC for the things that come out of my mouth for certain people. Just kidding. But no, he needs to have somebody on screen who's going to do that. You've got Sting. Sting would make a great GM. You've got give Paul White the job. I mean, Paul White would do okay. Bring someone over that has character, has charisma, that would do something with that. And again, I also agree too that you need to take away his phone and his Twitter. He needs to have somebody that's going to do his PR, because when you badmouth, think about the example again, and I said this before, when he goes on Twitter and goes on these tangents, number one, he's setting a bad example as a leader, because then you're thinking, okay, who's going to want to work for TN or for AEW? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Who's going to want to work for AEW? Because if the boss is going to do that, why should we work there? The second thing that I do want to kind of agree with Connor is that when Tony Khan is at the media scrum, he's like this. Like he's disengaged. He's not like fully present. And when you do have signs, again, of ADHD or on the spectrum, ADHD 1, you're going to be, you're going to be chattering when you're, depending, I mean, for me, I lack eye contact when I'm, especially in job interviews, one, because I'm used to, talking to adults with a room full of children behind me. So you might have the eye contact. You might appear nervous. You might even appear self-conscious We don't know, but I agree with Jason. He's not comfortable on TV, and you can definitely see it. The second thing is, oh, well, Tony Khan's got a big announcement next week on Dynamite. Who cares? Keep us in suspense. This is why I watch Power, because I don't know what's going to happen. Why watch General Hospital? I don't know what's going to happen. We don't want to know what's going to happen. Let it be a mystery. Sarah McLachlan, a mystery. Do it.
I like that idea. I like that idea. And yeah, I feel like Tony should have that support backstage as far as, a good writer to help with storylines, but also for creative like a Scott D'Amore. But like Jason said, a good on-screen presence of someone of authority. That
Connor,
kind of
get in
keeps
there.
Tony.
Jeez.
Yeah, that keeps Tony in the back. Yeah, to kind of let him, do what he's got to do business wise, and not too much on creative. You look at TNA. Scott D'Amore was always on television, was always on screen in some form or matter for it.
Yeah.
But he was also doing creative, and he was doing wonders for it. And so I think you need that for someone for Tony Khan to do in AEW.
And I'll say this for that as well. If you get that on-screen presence, GM role, whatever you want to call it, commissioner, every organization's called it something differently. Tony's got the money to take some acting classes. And, we've seen it. We've seen it for umpteen years in the wrestling business, like with a Bischoff or, Mr. McMahon character of the GM out there. This is mine. This is the end of it. Nobody can overturn me, blah, blah, blah. Then the music hits. And Vince or Bischoff come out there with that big grin on their face. Who's like, really?
Yeah.
and it makes for interesting TV. And it's like, do it your own way. I'm not saying copy stuff that's been, but again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. You're this fan of the 90s attitude, era, and you don't really seem to do anything with the knowledge that you claim to have. It's like, you don't want to see the same thing over and over again. That's what made Nitro so successful back in the day when it first started taking over, was you had the segment with the NWO at first. Then that would go right into the cruiserweights match, bringing in some of the luchadors. Then you would kind of go into a mid-card, TV title, U.S. title, something of that nature. And it always kept evolving, but you weren't seeing the same thing over and over again. And it's like, you can watch 3 matches on Dynamite, Collision, or sometimes Rampage, even though you only get 3 or 4 matches, and everybody's using a table. Everybody's using a chair. And it's like, go back. Not even ECW did that. And, that's when he started bringing in the outside Japanese talent, the outside luchadors. They split it up a little bit. And, I think I said this last week, but I'll use this again as an example. It's like when Adam Page first coined the phrase cowboy shit. Everybody's, oh, and they started chanting it, which they still do. Yeah, However, the next exact segment, Chris Jericho's out there, shit this, shit that, and it just shit on everything Adam Page just did. You can't, if you want something to be special, you can't, and I go back when Shawn Michaels first came back years ago, and Dolph Ziggler's talked about this. Everybody was using the super kick. And Shawn Michaels come back, Vince was like, hey, yeah, y'all can't do that anymore. Now, I see why the performers would be like, really? I've been doing it for 2 years or however long it had been going on. But the concept is the same. That's his finish. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But the concept is you got to keep something special. And if you're doing it segment after segment after segment, people get tired of it. They're going to turn the TV.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. As we wind down here, I kind of want to get some final thoughts from you guys as we tone down here. The final question I'm going to have for tonight is, in order for AEW to kind of get back to the right footing of when it started and Tony Khan at the wheel for it, what's one goal you want Tony Khan to achieve right now, like going forward, that would A, kind of save face for him as the owner and CEO of the company, and B, help them get back on the right track? Connor?
The one thing they really got to do, everyone stole my idea, but it needed to be said anyways. Scott D'Amore in AEW really needs to happen. If he was given the money and the resources, he could have brought TNA to heights that TNA hasn't saw in a long time. Scott D'Amore knows how to book wrestling shows. He knows how to deal with the locker room. He knows how to do this type of stuff. Like TNA's had all type of backstage fights, and they were squashed. Like they didn't result in all types of bull crap online and stuff. Scott D'Amore knows what he's doing, and he's worked a lot of people in AEW. You know, Deonna Purrazzo. There's so many people. Christian Cage. There's a lot of people that he's worked with. Probably half the locker room he's worked with some way or form in his career. I think Tony will always have a say probably in what's allowed on there or some fashion, but I feel like Scott D'Amore as the head booker and Tony not really taking a back seat, but being less involved in creative, you know. Because Scott D'Amore did a fantastic job in TNA, and I know he can do a fantastic job in AEW as well. Especially if Motor City Machine Guns are coming over, and like that would be really, really good. He knows how to book these guys, and I feel like he would know how to book all these other people, like Undisputed Kingdom, Wardlow. I feel like he would have better ideas. I feel like if they get Scott D'Amore and they put him as head booker, and Tony Khan just worked on building AEW up again, and I think that would get them on a good track again, like they were before. I think that would be the best move. But it's gonna have to be a consistent thing. You know, sometimes like this year, like AEW put on 2 good shows in a row, and then they'll go be back to a bad show, then they'll come back. Like it's not consistent. I feel like they need a wrestling booker, and I think Scott D'Amore is someone that can get them where they need to be.
Yeah. Jason, your one goal that Tony Khan needs to follow through this year to improve.
Look in the mirror and say, I'm the boss, and be the boss. You don't have to know everything to be the boss. There's a couple of things that I go into that with. One thing that I've really been disappointed with since the acquisition of Ring of Honor is the way it's been presented. I'm not a fan of all the belts on TV, and he's got the money to where while he was building a performance center type thing to help some of these younger people come along that they bring in from Japan, CMLL, a lot of people get offended when WWE puts somebody in NXT that they think is ready for the main roster. And it's not a fact their skills aren't ready for the main roster. They're teaching you how to do American TV. That's the main goal for established stars on NXT. But you don't have to find a TV deal for Ring of Honor right away. I'm taking that Honor app off. You could put it on you could tape a show every 2 weeks, put it on YouTube. You get viewers and you'll get a TV deal out of it. And you teach your guys and your girls, and you bring in somebody like a Scott D'Amore. He's about the only one you can think of off the top of your head, but there's other people like that. But instead of, you hear veterans say it all the time that you don't get into the wrestling business to make friends. You get into the wrestling business to make money. And if you come out when you're done with 1 or 2 really good friends, then consider yourself really lucky. So instead of trying to be everybody's buddy, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, if somebody handed me the money to go grab 51% of AEW right now, I'd walk in and say, okay. I'd have a meeting with the Young Bucks and say, hey, it's like this. You are no longer EVPs. I will be glad to release you from your contract if you want. If you want to stay, you're going to listen to my backstage advisors. You're going to learn how to wrestle an actual tag team match that's not a tornado tag team match every time you step in the ring. Then Adam Page and I are going to have kind of a similar conversation. Tell me why you went out there and went into business for yourself. Well, now I don't want to hear it. Colt Cabana as an agent, I'm sorry. There's nothing against Colt Cabana. He might be a nice guy. But when you got Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, and Jake Roberts and people like that, there is no damn reason in the world for somebody like Colt Cabana to be telling people how to run a match. Shouldn't be. And I'm flat out telling, I'm not firing you. But if you ever do that again, you will never work here again. And I will give you your release if that's what you want. Because all of them could go to WWE. I'm sure they'd sign them. I'm sure they'd sign the Bucks. I'm sure they'd sign Page just for the name. They've been on TV. But guess what? They're not going to get away with the crap they get away with. Mm-hmm. And if you by starting with those 3 guys, I wouldn't have a conversation with Kenny Omega until he was physically fit to come back. I would not put that stress on his plate while he's dealing with health issues. I just get well, Kenny. We'll talk when you can wrestle again. And if you can't, we'll find something for you to do. And the reason I say that is if you go back there to those three mainstay guys in the AEW locker room and say it's my way or the highway, guess what everybody else is going to do? They're going to fall in line.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Danny, your goal for Tony Khan moving forward?
I agree. Honestly, Jason and I are on the same page. I would do the same thing. And for Tony Khan, he needs to sit down, breathe in, breathe out, and listen to people. And don't listen to your friends, because when you listen to your friends, it's when your business goes to complete crap that you don't have anyone that wants to work for you, and you're not going to get quality work out of your employees. And to kind of take what Jason just said on a side note,
Hey, you see that? I got a vote to be in charge of AEW. See that comment?
Yeah, that one. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. This girl last year, that she, got supervisor, and I knew that she was a bad fit when I came back. My jaw just hit the floor. She was 90% work, 10% gossip. Our boss had to work in close proximity to her. And she's got serious situations going on, and the girl had the nerve to ask me if I could be trusted carrying a tuition check from her building down to the main office. I'm old enough to be your mother, little girl. Do you talk that way to your mother? Because my nieces and nephews who are her age and older wouldn't be talking that way. And again, it's a respect thing. And again, like Tony Khan, we're friends, we're buds. She still gets to keep your job. When I wanted leadership, they told me no. And because I wasn't their friend. And again, I'm not in it to make friends. I'm in it, because I love to do it. But still, Tony Khan needs to sit down. He needs to listen to people. He needs to look in the mirror and realize he's the problem. Now, the other thing, bring people in that can do this. Get off of Twitter. Send me my contract. I will do as, talking for him, because obviously I love to talk. Get someone to hire a publicist, hire somebody in PR. He's got the money to do it. All he has to do is sign the checks. That's it. And demote Cucamonga too, on top of that. But
I think we're all
that know the business that can do it. You're going to get eyes on that product. You're going to have a ratings pop, and people are going to be like, WWE, wait, I have to watch AEW.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is I think we're all in agreement that Tony Khan has to realize you're in charge of a business right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be polite with everybody in it. You can kind of, be nice, be friendly with them, but also draw that line of where it's the business. Like, hey, I'll be cool with you, but you got to follow my rules in this business, because either you're going to make it, you break it. And that's basically the gist of it. It's the same thing in any job that you apply for, that you basically have to go there. If you want to be friendly with your boss, be friendly with your boss, but understand that's your boss. And that boss can make decisions that can either further your career or crash your career. And Tony Khan has to understand that line. And like we've been saying, he's got the funds to make things happen, to bring in the right people, to guide him in the right track to where they can be successful. But he also has to take that step back and realize, I have to put my big boy shoes on and be the boss. And I honestly think he has to be much more bullheaded. Like, he has to have that mindset of, they can't cross me like this. This is my job. Like, I had given them the keys to the kingdom, and I can easily take those away from them because they're not following what I want them to follow. And again, bringing in someone like a Scott D'Amore, an authority figure, like you said, Danny, bring in someone for PR to handle all the social media stuff. I think Tony just really needs to focus on the business end of it, and he can have that little input on creative. And like Connor was saying, that he'd probably get the final say in a lot of things. But having someone like a Scott D'Amore take that reign and run creative, and having someone as an on-screen presence, as an authority figure,
Jason,
which would really boost it a lot more. But as we wind down here, I know we're getting to the hour and 50 mark, trying to keep it below 2 hours since we're not doing WrestleManias, Jason. But I kind of want to
Remind me
wind
again.
down.
Did Andre ever get a title shot? I forgot.
Yeah, he did. I think. Yeah, 3, 4, 5. I can't remember. He was at
3.
one of them.
3.
But yeah, no, he was at 3. Yeah. Yeah, no, he did. He had 3. But yeah, here I am going rambling now. But yeah, so I think the final say on the assessment of Tony Khan is just be the boss, make the right decisions, get the right people in your circle, and I think you'll be all right, and you'll get AEW back on the right track. With that said, I thank you guys for joining me tonight on the official assessment of Tony Khan. We look forward to seeing what AEW can do, and if Tony sees this, Tony, hey, please take our advice. Please make something happen with AEW. Do better, buddy.
Take Daniel's advice. Give me a job.
Yes,
no,
yes,
hire
exactly.
me. If I can write my boss's PR statement and send it to the news stations and get a compliment from a reporter asking me if I majored in journalism, Tony Khan needs to hire me.
Yeah,
he needs
Tony
to hire Adam.
literally,
He needs to hire Connor and Jason. Okay, Jason can be the on-screen authority figure.
Yeah, I think right now, Tony, like I said, if Tony ever sees this, we all support you. You know, we just want you to get that strong foot forward and be the boss and make sure everything works so well in full circle. Well, not full circle. The spinning machine, the cogs in the machine are spinning well for AEW. With that said, we thank you guys for joining us tonight. I want to thank Connor, Jason, Danny for joining me tonight. Always fun talking with you guys. Just going through the comments as we're winding down here. We thank all you guys for commenting. Ron, thank you for commenting. Davis, Jesse, Eddie, Daniel, Davis, Comics on Infinite, Lexus. Thank you guys for all commenting. See, I'm trying to go through all the names in the comments right now that have been commenting. So thank you guys for really commenting on here. Make sure you guys tune in. We always do live reactions every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday for both Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. We also have interviews up. Our last interview was with Eugene, former WWE star. Really cool guy, really laid back. I do believe we have a few ideas of interviews coming up. Connor, do we have any official word yet on upcoming interviews or not yet?
This would have been the perfect time to do it because of the episode. I have a major announcement. Not been, but there is a lot of interviews in the works. Probably too many, but it feels like a lot of people enjoy them. And I actually went to a wrestling convention this past weekend, and I got to talk to a few people about getting them on here, and I got some emails that they gave me. One of them, I guess since it's fitting, major announcements. I'll announce this announcement later, but if this person comes on, you'll get the announcement later. But Victoria, I got to meet her and talk with her, and she gave me her email and all that. But there's a lot of other people. If anyone knows who I met, you probably got an idea of the people that I asked. Some people were, they don't. It's not really their fault. It's who they. I'm not gonna get into that. I don't want anyone coming at me for that. I know how some fan base. I'm not gonna be in that. But there is a lot of people that we've talked about. I mentioned it before. Kevin Von Erich's 2 sons will be on here eventually. That was part of the deal. There's a lot of people that I've talked to with Adam and people that I've been trying to get on. One interview I really want to make happen at some point is Ken Shamrock. I'm still really pissed about that. To this day, one of these days I'm going to try to meet Ken Shamrock in person and get the bottom line of that, because
the man was a Fox back in 1998.
Yeah, that was a really.
I loved Shamrock back then.
Just how you said it.
I forgot how great he was.
That was a lot of drugs.
He was ready to come on to talk with us that night. He was ready, and then his people kind of messed it up. But if I can get in contact with him, I know he'd probably make it up and stuff like that. But and Juventud Guerrera, that's still a working plan. But definitely stay tuned to all of our links, because there'll definitely be a lot more interviews to come.
Awesome. And make sure you guys hit that like, that subscribe, share button. We are on all platforms, a lot of platforms, actually. We are on YouTube, Twitch. We're on Spotify. I believe we now have an Instagram, which is great. So make sure you guys check all that out. Make sure you guys share all the links too for all our interviews, for all our live reactions, and all that stuff. We do appreciate you all with that. And with that being said, we thank you all again. And as always, good night to you all.
Good night.
Night.